This vision only started to come to me once I started to learn more about who I am. Growing up in an Indian immigrant household, I spent most of my life really trying to conform. I wanted to be the good Indian boy. I went to college for engineering. I studied computer science. Did not like computer science. It was not the match for me. But that's why I went to school, thousands of miles away from where I grew up. And I continued after school. I took a corporate job. I moved to New York City, and something was missing. And I realized that there was more to me than I was even allowing myself to tap into. I was conforming to a story that I thought other people wanted to hear or wanted to see. And that time in New York is my late 20s. It was the beginning, I would say, of my awakening. I started to get little clues about some element of spirit that I was being shown. I had grown up in a Hindu household. I was open to spirituality. My parents, are followers of a guru, and we talk about love and service. But I hadn't quite experienced this connection to source. But I started getting these clues in New York. And it was around that time, too, where I realized that I was not living authentically. I had actually been hiding a key part of myself, really about who I'm attracted to. And I needed to start exploring that. And I felt called to go to Berkeley for business school. It was the only school I wanted to go to. And at the time, at least, it was a really hard school to get into. And I managed to just cruise right in. It was so easy, so flowy. I didn't know anything about this law of least effort back then, but looking back, that's exactly what happened. And I went to Berkeley, and it was during this time of real transformation. It was a really hard time in my life, actually, where I was beginning the coming out process. I had lost 2 friends to suicide. A lot of things were happening, and I started wondering, who am I? It was 2012. I interned at Facebook. This was right pre-IPO, right around the time, actually, in fact, the week I started my internship was the week of the IPO. At the time, it was the hottest company to get an internship at. I only applied to one internship, and that's the one I got, and it was really easy to get. It wasn't supposed to be, but again, law of least effort. And there I was on the Facebook campus, and it was the week of the IPO, and there's media everywhere, and all these people running around, and they were so happy because they'd gone public. And I had started to wonder, well, what is this company? What did they become, and what could they have been if they were more conscious? There's no judgment. They did what they had to do, and I'm very grateful, in fact, to Facebook for creating this whole technology around social media, because it's inspiring this company now. But it did make me question, what is going on here? Now, after that internship, I couldn't get a job in tech. I didn't really want to work in tech. I had a lot of doors were slamming shut. I should have been kind of a shoo-in, really, just on paper for certain jobs. My heart just wasn't in it. And so I kind of floated around. I took some jobs here and there. I didn't work for a period of time. I had this one job, and I got fired from that job. And it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was 2018, and that kickstarted my spiritual awakening. And I found myself in Bali studying yoga with my teacher at the time, Janet Stone. Really that's a whole story for another time, but I was very much guided to go to Bali at that time. And it kick-started this awakening where throughout that year, I didn't work, but I had a consistent yoga practice. I started meditating, and I had a different relationship to art and music and culture and festivals and Burning Man and all these things. I started to be much more open to what Spirit had for me. And later that year, around November, I felt this call to go to India. And I had the chance to go. It was a classmate who was getting married in Delhi, and I decided to go. And after the wedding, I went up to Rishikesh, and I'm sitting in an ashram, and there were some people there that had some connections to my yoga life, and a bunch of people in my life actually just happened to be there, musicians. No coincidences. And there I am at the ashram, sitting in meditation, wondering, what am I supposed to be doing? I don't know what I'm even doing professionally. And a voice came through, and it was quite loud. It wasn't actually subtle at all. And it said, Zubin, you're supposed to become a designer. And I realized, oh my God, I've always wanted to be a designer. I'm really drawn to creative people. When I lived in New York, my friends were all actors and writers and models and musicians, and I loved being around creative people, but I thought perhaps it was too late for me. But I got the message, and I switched careers to become a product designer in 2019. And I'm starting over with all these 25-year-olds. I think I was 36 at the time. And it still felt right. And at the time, my housemate, also my classmate from Berkeley, had started a nonprofit called Reimagine that was focused on death and dying. And at the time, before COVID, they were focused on having festivals and gatherings to open up conversations about death through the lens, through art and music and creativity. It's something we should be talking about, but it's so taboo in our culture. And I also read this book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer that's been really transformative for me. And one thing I learned was about following the breadcrumbs. Don't think about things too much. Just follow the breadcrumbs. If they show up in your path and they feel like there's some alignment and your heart's into it, just take the step. And that's how I took this work with Reimagine. It was an unpaid contract or unpaid project. And then I did a contract project, then part-time project, and then it leveled up into a full-time role as head of product. And I loved that work. I loved it because it was so deeply meaningful, and we were talking about grief and feelings and opening up conversations and really just doing amazing work. And I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity because it showed me what was important to me. It wasn't about chasing tech money or prestige or status. In this case, it was working at a nonprofit for far less than a market value, but I was happy and fulfilled. And during that time, we had actually tried to build a version of this. That's what I was working on, building a platform around post-traumatic growth. And there came a message and a time through, and really through divine synchronicity, and it's a beautiful story of a trip to the volcano on Big Island where I asked for help. Asked Pele, the fire goddess, for some help. I was feeling stuck. And then within a week, everything changed. The clarity came, the funding came in, and I knew it was time for me to go and start this company. So that was about a year ago. And the name for the company and the logo came through during a 10-day silent meditation retreat. When I started the company, I basically declared, I need some help. I need some spiritual guides. And not long after that, my two spiritual guides showed up on the beach here in Kailua, who I meet with regularly, a native Hawaiian elder and his partner, and they've been guiding me and really being that spiritual guidance, because this work and this practice, it's a spiritual mission more than anything. And so I look at my own life and I notice where I got stuck. And that's what I want to keep in mind when I'm building this company and hiring people. I'm looking for other people who are geniuses, who feel stuck, who are just crying out calling out for a chance to let their genius be expressed. And that's how we're building this company. And everything we're doing is built off my lived experience. Everything. It's not just based off readings or videos. It's on what I've experienced and lived. And I know that I had to have those years of confusion and, even lack of financial security, and all of it was all leading up to this moment. Everything was culminating for this moment. And it took that first step of declaring to the universe, I don't want an ordinary life. And I started to step into my authentic being, who I actually was. And that started to evolve into an understanding, a more deeper understanding of who I am. Beyond Zubin, beyond this person in this body who's living in Hawaii, that's just an aspect of my actual being, which is infinite and abundant and source. And so I've seen what's possible. I know it's possible for all humans. This is what's core in all spiritual teachings. A lot of things have been distorted over time, but we have the power. We can decide and declare the kind of life we want. We already know what we want. And it takes that first step. It takes a declaration to Spirit, to Source, to God, to say, I'm ready. And so here we are. My story continues to unfold and evolve. I'm very unattached to how things look and appear and how they go. There's a big vision. The how or why or when, I leave that to God, to Spirit. And the last thing I'll say is, on this journey, nothing has taken me backwards. Back during the time where I thought I was letting go of my career and I'd thrown away this degree from Berkeley and this internship, it all makes sense now. I had to experience that and then be unattached. Because if I got attached truly to what the tech industry offers, there's a lot of money and wealth and status and prestige, I never would have joined a nonprofit to work on something like death, to make less money than I would be making at a tech company, to even have come up with the idea or let the idea come through me. I actually didn't come up with it. It came through me for this company, for Realize. And so all of it is leading up to my own self-realization. It's part of my unique path. And it's very clear to me there's 8 billion paths. There's one for each of us. I can share my story, but this path is not the path for anybody else. Ever. In the history of eternity, there's a story for each of us. So this company is part of my story. It continues to unfold and evolve, and I invite everyone else to start asking the same questions. Who am I? And watch where that leads you.